Hey, it's the moment you've been waiting for. It's been the moment I've been waiting for. Or it's a moment at least. Hello, everybody. It's me, Bob Harris, Senior Editor of Diehards.com, here to guide you into week 6. We'll be answering your questions at some point. I want to talk about a few topics first, and kind of that's going to be the way we do things going forward. Look, Saturday I come in here for a solid hour, answer your questions, take care of business. I'm going to get to you and do the questions here as well. But we're going to talk about a few topics before we get into that. And pretty soon we'll start mixing in some guests and having a little more fun with this whole thing. We're going to call it On the Hot Seat with Bob Harris. It'll be kind of like a regular show. And again, there will be interaction. We're going to have audio. We'll have your questions here, and we may be trying to work some of you into the mix on video as well. So look forward to that when we can pull it off. And all the time, always trying to get better. It's an evolution of Football Diehards. It's a website you should go to. I work there. You'll find all kinds of information there. My team notes are up right now. Week 6 content rolling, tools, information, columns, everything you need. Tons of video content as well as the week progresses. So lots of good things there. You can hear me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Of course, also, you catch me, as you saw in the intro, Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. All those. Hi, Dame. Hi, Remy. Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate your time. We'll kind of crank things up here. Talk about a few topics of the day that I think deserve some attention, and then we'll get to your questions. If you want your questions answered, I'm going to remind you again. I need a first initial and last name, or at least you can go first name, last name, and who the team they're playing, right? Like just so I can get through things and process the information a little faster, because I'm going to go through some other information first before I get to your questions. So be patient with me. We'll work through this. Hopefully I can keep you interested and entertained until I get to those. And I will answer them, though. But format them so it helps out. If you are not subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Hit the like button if you like. Feed the algorithm. If you don't like me, you can hit the dislike button. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think it's a very suitable thing to do. Anyway, in case you haven't noticed, there's been some changes in the NFL. At least one coaching change. Matt Rule is out in Carolina. Good afternoon, Mr. Scampers. Glad to see you make it. I always feel much better once you show up. So yeah, Matt Rule has been fired. Steve Wilkes takes over, formerly the head coach of the Cardinals during the Josh Rosen era. It was like a 1-year era, right? And he'll get another shot here. He's made some changes to the assistants. On the defensive side of the ball, Ben McAdoo remains in, but there are going to be some issues, right? Baker Mayfield hurt his ankle. They're calling him day-to-day. They're lying. It's not day-to-day. It's like a 4 to 6 week injury, they're saying. Sam Darnold not ready to come back. P.J. Walker will be the starter. He's won a couple games for them at some point. And I guess we're all at the point where, can it get any worse, right? Baker Mayfield has been a abysmal failure in this offense. And whether that's due to his own doing, circumstances beyond his control, play calling, all of the combination of all the above, some of it seems like it's in his control. He's just struggling, man. Just can't get it right. Has a lot of passes batted down. Fortunately, he has not totally bombed the fantasy value of Christian McCaffrey. But DJ Moore would like to have a word with him. So we'll see. Again, can it get worse? A tough game this week against the Rams, at least on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not sure if the Rams offense is all we expected it to be. But a lot of talk about possible trades. Maybe they're ready to bail, right? Maybe they're going to try and, start moving some of their assets and totally tank the season. Christian McCaffrey's name was the first one that came up. And it makes sense, right? The team they were connected with is the Buffalo Bills. Brandon Beane, the GM there, formerly with the Panthers. So denials all around, as you would expect, because, hell, I'm old enough to remember when Russell Wilson wasn't going to get traded, right up until the day he was traded. So these things happen. We'll see what plays out. DJ Moore, I think, seems like the other thing. And maybe these are just wishful thinkings we'd like to see. So what do you think? Put in the comments if you think, does Christian McCaffrey make out with a trade to Buffalo, or are there too many mouths to feed there? Or is he so damn good that it just wouldn't matter? He would be like the apex predator in that offense. It just seems like it'd be maybe too many mouths to feed. I kind of like him being the guy that carries the load, but it's a much better offense. Maybe there's room there. What do you guys think about that? Either way, going up against the Rams this week, I don't think anything's going to change in the next day or two, and we will see what happens there. Miami, the Dolphins. Skylar Thompson gets the start this week. Not a real surprise. Didn't think anyone expected him to see Tua be forced back into the mix. He did work on a limited basis today, but they don't feel like he'd be cleared with a full week of practice. Kind of the same reason we're not going to see Dak Prescott this week. He's back and throwing. So, but needs a full week of practice. And Teddy Bridgewater could get cleared as well. He'll be the backup, it sounds like. Raheem Mostert showed up not practicing. That's a concern. Just when we started to think we could trust an asset in this backfield, Raheem Mostert takes a hit. So we'll see. I think, with Skylar Thompson with a full week of practice, is there hopes that he can fuel the fires of Tyreek Hill, who practiced fully to get today, by the way, had the boot on his foot after the game last week. That was a big concern. Not a concern now. Mike McDaniel, he's a funny guy, joking that he will be practicing today without the boot, and he did practice without the boot. Jalen Waddle, though, kind of disappeared last week, so it's a lot of issues here and with this offense. And with Skylar Thompson starting this game, I have concerns. Minnesota, not like an impenetrable fortress defensive-wise, but still not an ideal circumstance. I do think, Skylar Thompson, could he be better with a full week of preparation? Sure. He's a Matt Waldman special, by the way. You guys, if you're out here listening or watching this video, Matt Waldman well, contributes to all the magazines that we do. A regular guest on these videos and on the Football Diehards radio program. Author of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, thinks very highly of Skylar Thompson. Didn't think he would get this opportunity or this immediate of an opportunity, but yeah, we'll see. Mr. Scamper, CMC would be amazing anywhere. Better Bills offense would definitely have more TD equity. I would agree with that. That would work as well. Juju. So who to look to trade for? I will get to your questions. Again, if you have lineup questions, kind of format them in, first initial, last name. Who they're playing would be helpful, just so I could process more quickly once I get to them. So that'd be good news for me. Denver Broncos offense not playing well. Averaging a couple touchdowns a game. I want to say 14 points, and maybe I'm a little low or a little high, even a little low, I think. But Russell Wilson had the platelet-rich plasma injection, which nobody gets for the injury he has. It's a torn latissimus dorsi. That's the guy at the gym with the lats. And so hopefully he can get it together. Obviously, being healthy would be helpful. Also, understanding and having a good feel for this offense. It's asking him to do things he hasn't done as much in the past. I'm old enough to remember when this offense went to Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers struggled a little with it at first, and it ended up working out well. I'm not saying this is an apples-to-apples comparison, but I think, we give it a little time. In the meantime, Russell Wilson's kind of unplayable, right? I mean, honestly, Jerry Jeudy for me, kind of unplayable at the moment. I might still go with Courtland Sutton. We'll see. The tight ends, it's been such a mixed bag. It's hard to play them. So Melvin Gordon, Courtland Sutton. Beyond that, you feel like you're taking your chances with this offense. And it's a Monday night game, so we'll have plenty of time. On the other side of the ball, it sounds like Keenan Allen heading his way back after he has made up with his coach for calling him out for that fourth down call. We'll see. Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor. I thought for sure he would be fine this week, and he still may be, but he did not practice today, was working on the side. Long layoff. According to T. Higgins, that long turnaround doesn't always help, right? How many people out there played T. Higgins in the Sunday night game against Baltimore? I think it was a great matchup, and he'd have all kinds of run, and the ankle wasn't going to be an issue because he played through it the last game, had a full 10 days to get ready. Mr. Scamper's Panthers fire sale would be a death knell to this franchise with all the QB shenanigans of the last 4 years. I think, obviously they're going to be all in. Don't you think for a quarterback in the draft? I mean, this is something David Tepper has talked about endlessly. We need a quarterback. We got to have, he's talked about, not being one of these, in a league designed for everyone to be about 500. He doesn't want to be 500, and he's looked at the teams as the rest of us have, and teams that aren't 500 because they have a good quarterback for the most part, right? And so he realizes that, and I think, look, they were in on Deshaun Watson for the obvious reason, and I think they'll find a quarterback. I'm not the draftnik, but there are some good. It's a pretty good draft class, so I'm thinking they'll go all in on that. But the Jonathan Taylor not practicing today, a little bit of concern. We'll see what plays out. That offense has been a mess, right? Just like hard to trust. They end up at the end of the game, there's points there, but they haven't been running the ball well. They haven't been pass protecting well. So we'd like to see just a little more consistency. I will remind you, though, Jonathan Taylor came into the game against Denver last week, although he did not play. Came into that game with, I think, 15 more fantasy points that he had this time last year. So it's not like he's been a failure. He's always been a slow starter. Joe Burrow says, I'm a slow starter. Jonathan Taylor is off to a rousing start. But anyhow, don't give up on some of these players. We'll see what happens. Going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had their struggles of their own. Nyheim Hines has been a little nicked up. He got the concussion at the last game. He was working in a non-contact jersey, so he'll probably be ready. New Orleans, seems like Jameis Winston's ready to come back, or almost ready. Worked on a limited basis today. So did Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill does everything on a limited basis. Snaps, everything except score touchdowns. Right? Taysom Hill. Are we playing him as a tight end one yet? Is it like, are you taking your chances? I was thinking about this today. If you have Travis Kelce, you're playing him. If you have Mark Andrews, you're playing him. There's probably a couple others that I'm thinking you'd probably play over him. But honestly, it seems like in a position full of dart tosses, he's a pretty damn good dart toss. I'm probably playing Dallas Goedert every week, Zach Ertz every week, Tyler Higbee for the volume as the de facto wide receiver 2 for the Rams. Way to go, Allen Robinson. Hayden Hurst is moving into that territory. I think after that, yes, I did not mention George Kittle for a reason. But I think after that, you start saying, man, these players are a little bit of a dart toss. Maybe I should take a chance on a guy with that huge upside that can happen on a narrow band. Are you guys playing Taysom Hill as your tight end? I'm thinking about it. I have him in a number of rosters, especially in Dynasty, where I had Drew Brees in super flexes, and he looked like the backup. So we're cobbling it together. So Jameis Winston back on the practice field. Seems likely he'll play, but doesn't seem certain, right? It's not a lock that he'll be back. And there's been some talk that maybe they should stick with Andy Dalton. I don't think they'll do that. I think we'll see him. But no Michael Thomas at practice, no Jarvis Landry at practice, no Chris Olave at practice. If all those pieces are out, Taysom is a good piece, I think, either way, no matter what he's doing. And so Mr. Scamper says he's starting Taysom over Kittle. I had this conversation with Mike Dempsey today, my Sirius XM co-host. I think we're with you, man. Look at last week. What was Kittle? Tight end 13? Not a lot of tight ends have 4 touchdown upside. I don't know that Taysom Hill has it every week, right? But not a lot of tight ends get those high leverage looks every damn time they touch the football, and he gets those. So there's something there. All right, I wanted to look at a couple situations. And again, I see the questions coming in. I will get to them shortly. Wanted to talk about a couple topics that I think are worth noting. The first one is the New York Jets, where Breece Hall is turning into the thing that a lot of us drafted him to be. I kept thinking, this summer, I watched his ADP climbing and thought, wow, is he really going to be that guy? And then we opened the season and we saw, Michael Carter come in kind of as the, what Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, they're called the heartbeat of the offense. Damn. Well, it turns out you can be the heartbeat of the offense playing a supporting role. And so Breece Hall finally came into his own. But this has been an ongoing process, right? The last couple of weeks we've seen this. This past week, in a huge win over the Dolphins, he came up with the game-winning touchdown the week before against the Steelers. And then this last week, 97 rushing yards, 100 receiving yards, franchise record for total rookies in the blowout of the Miami Dolphins. He only scored the 1 touchdown, but he made a number of big plays, including a 79-yard catch and run, 61 yards after the catch. It was the longest play by a rookie since Nick Chubb in Week 10 of 2018. So he's got that in him, right? And Robert Saleh said after the game, those are, that's the kind of home run hitting plays they wanted. Michael Carter was on the field, came in, and it scored a couple touchdowns, right? So Hall wasn't happy about that, but the fantasy managers who played Carter were. And I think this rushing attack is the thing to go into. And by the way, those guys were on the field together more than we've seen them in previous games. So both playable commodities. I think going into this week, you look at Breece Hall as a running back 1 against the Green Bay Packers, or low-end, borderline running back 1-2, right? And I think Michael Carter remains a viable flex play. Remember, Michael Carter came out of North Carolina. He played alongside Javonte Williams. He's used to this timeshare situation, being the satellite option, in the backfield. And I think he's going to fare well in this role going forward. The issue for me is the wide receivers for the Jets, where we thought, wow, Garrett Wilson came on. We had a couple really good weeks, and he looked phenomenal. And we've seen, since Zach Wilson comes back, it's been less than phenomenal, right? And in fact, this last week, everyone got 4 targets, except Tyler Conklin. He got shut out. One of the guys that it seemed like he had emerged as a viable weekly play gets shut out, and that was kind of disappointing. But the 4 targets for Garrett Wilson, 4 targets for Elijah Moore, 4 targets for Corey Davis. I think any given week, any of those guys could spike up. Braxton Berrios could show up. So that's going to be a rough call. I think the running backs are what we're going to play right now. I mean, you're still playing the one you have in terms of receivers. But if you're deciding between those guys, I think it's going to take a little time before we get that figured out with Zach Wilson running the helm. You know, it's going to be easy to figure out which Seattle running back to play. That's right. It happened. So I profess to be injury agnostic. I don't draft with any fear of injury. If players have a long history of injury, like if it's a chronic single thing, yes, I might, be leery of that. Might use it as more of a hair splitter, but I tend to draft players who I think have talent and are at the right value, right? Or have the right cost. And so Kenneth Walker III comes in here for Rashad Penny, who I drafted the heck out of. I drafted the heck out of Kenneth Walker as well, especially in best ball. But I have some redraft shares. But right now, here's what we know, right? The feature back, the lead back in this offense is going to have a huge role. Pete Carroll is very predictable, whether it's lying about injuries or whether it's, whatever it is. Pete Carroll does the same old stuff all the time. And what he does is he leans on that primary back. And it was going to be Rashad Penny until it wasn't, right? Until Rashad Penny got hurt or something happened. Kenneth Walker shares weren't going to go great. Very encouraging, the plays. We saw him in New Orleans. Very explosive play. To me, he comes in as a solid running back too. If you have him, you might end up being a league winner for you down the stretch as he plays along, because you were investing, an 8th or 9th round pick to get him, sometimes double-digit picks, sometimes a little before, sometimes a little after Rashad Penny. I think Rashad Penny probably would have held the job had he stayed healthy, and Walker would have played a minimal role. Now he's in that primary role. Pete Carroll will not let go of him. They added Tony Jones Jr. They've got DJ Dallas. They have Travis Homer when he comes off IR. None of those guys are going to cut significantly into Kenneth Walker's workload. You will be playing him as a locked-in running back 2 and having some expectations for some running back 1 week. So enjoy that, everybody. That should be the expectation. Like, definitely solid running back 2 and potential running back 1. And by the way, Geno Smith, real or mirage? Tyler Lockett would like you to know it's the real thing. Tyler Lockett is the real thing, right? Lockett hasn't had fewer than 75 yards since week 1. He's had a 100-yard game. He's had a 91-yard game, has touchdowns. I think he and DK Metcalf, we're going to look back at the start of the season. Hopefully we learn some lessons about, our fears of, somebody not having a good quarterback, right? It's not like they don't have a quarterback. It's like they don't have an ideal quarterback. Well, it turns out maybe sometimes even the unideal. Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper are prime examples. Is Amari Cooper going to be great every week? No. Is he going to be pretty damn good some weeks? Yes. It's not like they don't have a quarterback, and that's what we convince ourselves during drafts when we see these situations. I mean, how late was DK Metcalf going? How late was Tyler Lockett going? How late was Amari Cooper going? It's crazy. We need to think about that next year when we're drafting. All right, so there I've kind of set the table for some things going on this week. Also, I left one thing out I should talk about. Devontae Adams is not going to jail. He's on the bye this week. He's not playing, but he did push that guy down in the stadium, and he is going to have to pay a price, and I'm guessing in addition to the charges that are pressed against him. And by the way, those are really minor charges. They first reported as a misdemeanor. I think it's even less than that. And the police probably wouldn't have pressed charges. The actual victim of the crime, in this case, pressed the charges. And so he's going to get his day. This seems like once there's a civil settlement, meaning somebody gets paid, probably a lot of these charges go away. I think the end result here, though, is going to be if Devontae Adams isn't suspended for a game, I'll be really surprised. So watch for that coming in the next day or two. We'll get that figured out. The league isn't in a hurry because the Raiders are on a bye anyway. But that's going to be an issue we have to deal with. Damn it. All right, now your questions are something I have to deal with. But there's no damn it's about it. I'm excited to do that. Love your questions. Again, hope you've been phrasing them and framing them in a way that I can easily answer. If you're just dialed in or if you don't come around a lot or this is your first time here, I'm Bob Harris. I love answering your questions. I love it when you give me first and last names or at least a first initial last name. Helpful if you give me the team they're playing against so I can process the information quickly. If you don't know who I am, I'm at footballdiehards.com. You can go there. It's a website. We've been around a long time. This is like 30 years. Yes, that's a long time. And you can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, of course. If you go to Football Diehards, Use the promo code Diehards, get 15% discount on anything you buy, and there's a lot of stuff that's worthwhile there, including our premium subscription service, the Flash Update. I demand you check it out. Okay, I don't demand anything. I'm just a guy. All right, so let's get to some of your questions before the dog jumps me. The dog is very excited at the moment. Say hello to the dog, everybody. Cats are upstairs. Can't say hi to them. Fave Rocks, should I trade Miles Sanders and Pickens for James Conner? No. And I'm a big James Conner fan. I like James Conner. I drafted heavily, hoping I would get running back, paying running back 2 to 3 price, expecting to get some running back 1 outcomes any given week. Haven't seen that yet. And until this offense gets it completely together, I don't know that I will. He's hurt this week again. So watch out for that. I feel like he has a chance to play. It's a rib injury that he's kind of been dealing with the last few weeks, and he's wearing extra padding for it. If not, I'm sure that, that they've added a couple pieces there as well. Benjamin, though, came in, had a really good game. I'm sure he'll be very popular on the waiver wires, and he probably should be, especially if you're the manager with James Conner. Why is that? It's because Darrell Williams suffered a knee injury that'll keep him out for a week. Jonathan Ward went on IR. He's done for the year. They've added a couple guys, Corey Clement and Tyson Williams to the practice squad. I wouldn't get that excited about anything, but in Conner's case, man, until I see it, look, Miles Sanders is giving you a solid run every week. I think Pickens is a guy that's going to rise up. Look, if the Steelers are horrible, and they are, right, there's a reason Najee Harris has no value. Is because they can't run the ball. They're going to have to throw the ball. Kenny Pickett is willing to put it down the field, and I think Pickens benefits. I'm not doing that one. Paul DeSantis, his wide receivers stink, everybody. Damn it. His wide receivers are Darnell Mooney and Elijah Moore. Would I trade Geno Smith for Curtis Samuel? I have Mahomes. Sure, I would do that. Curtis Samuel, I haven't checked this week. Let me look at the numbers for this week and just see where he's at. The role has been solid. I think for the season, where is he at? Curtis Samuel, wide receiver 14 so far in scoring. That's down. I think he was in the top 10 going into last week. But I think the role is solid enough. Whatever other pieces around or not around, Jahan Dotson and Logan Thomas won't be playing in Thursday Night Football, by the way. So maybe a little more run for Curtis Samuel in addition. Brian Robinson coming on strong, people. I think you can go ahead and assume him to be the running back 1 for the Commanders there in Washington. I think Antonio Gibson outsnapped him 19-16, but more carries for Robinson, and I think that's the plan going forward. So expect more of that. But also Curtis Samuel, they have a role designed for him. I would do this trade like Geno Smith is you can probably cobble something together there. Patrick Mahomes is the guy you're going to be playing every week. So there you go. Pittman or Davis for Buffalo. Pittman. Michael Pittman or Davis for Buffalo. Boy, Kansas City. I want a piece of that shootout, right? By the way, it's helpful if you give me the first names because sometimes it takes me a second to figure out who they are. Probably, boy, this is so close. I'm probably slight lean to Pittman, but I wouldn't talk you out of Davis in this one. I mean, we all want to piece that Buffalo offense in the shootout or what we anticipate to be a shootout against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think they're both in the same tier for me. Basically, they're both, wide receiver 2. So picking the one of your choice is not a bad idea. And if you have a hunch about Davis, like I had a hunch about Davis last week, I'm not going to lie. I feel really good about it. And if you've been listening to me on the radio, you knew I was answering a lot of questions and I was picking Davis over a lot of players. I don't know that I expected the output I got, but I expected a pretty good game, right, against the Steelers, whose secondary is pretty beat up. And so I expect another shootout, so I'm not against that. I do think Pittman has a solid role. It's a high floor play to me, or at least a solid floor play where maybe Davis is going to have a little more fluctuation. So, again, both in the same tier. Wouldn't talk you out of them. Slightly into Pittman if you want the solid floor. Davis is your home run play. CMC would be amazing everywhere. Yes, he would. Michael Alexander. All my starting receivers are either banged up or on a bye. All I have left is Juju. So who to look at to trade for? Well, Michael Alexander, like receivers who won't be too hard to trade for. Well, I don't know who those would be because I'm not in your league. Here's what you do when you need to make a trade. You need to go out and you need to identify. You look at every roster that's in your league. You look at everyone's rosters. And you see who has too many receivers, right? And you look at your roster and you see what your strengths are. And you compare your strengths to the weaknesses of those teams with a lot of receivers. And you go out and you make them an offer. I mean, so when you ask me an amorphous question, it's just, I mean, I don't know enough about your league and what the rosters look like. You have to go out and do that legwork. But do that legwork, right? I mean, I'm not trying to be dismissive of your question because I think it deserves an answer, and that is the answer. Go out and study the opposing rosters and find out someone who has a couple. I just did a trade this week where I had a few, lower end wide receivers, and somebody needed that were still pretty good. But the upper end of my roster, guys like Devontae Adams and players that were doing pretty well at wide receiver, that I could live without, say, a Christian Kirk. And someone came and targeted me and said, hey, look, I have this weakness at wide receiver. Some of your guys would help me out a little bit. And here, I'll give you back this thing that maybe you have a need for. I have Derrick Henry out this week, and so I got Austin Eckler. So, that strengthens me down the stretch and also strengthens me in the long run, in the short term. But what he had to do was go out and look at every roster in the league and say, wow, who needs what I have? And that's what you need to do, Michael. So, again, not trying to be dismissive of your question, but that's the process that you need to go through. Should I trade away Debo, says Mark Grefford. Again, this is going to be dependent on your league and your situation. Like if you have Debo and three other, like if there's someone on your roster that you're saying, damn it, I don't want to bench this guy every week, right? That's kind of where I get to, right? If I have like 4 wide receivers that have to be in the starting lineup, and every week I have a miserable decision because I can only start 3 and there's no flex or whatever, or I have enough flex. I have a running back in the flex play that I can't sit either. That's when I start looking to trade. So yes, Debo would be a reasonable player to trade away because you'd get a good return. He's a big name, been relatively productive. Might wait for a super huge game, but yes. So, and what would you get in return? You would go out and you would look at the other team's rosters and you would look at your roster and say, wow, I need a running back. Who has a lot of running backs that doesn't have a lot of wide receivers? Seth Cloutier. Help me out with that, Seth. Should I trade James Conner, Keenan Allen, and Bateman for Jamar Chase? You'd be giving up too much in that case, to me. Andrea, hello. Need one flex and one flex Sutton. I'm guessing one wide receiver and one flex. So Sutton versus the Chargers in Monday Night Football. Pittman versus Jacksonville. Hollywood Brown versus Seattle. And Eno Benjamin versus Seattle in PPR. So I'm going to play Hollywood. And I'm probably going to play Pittman over Sutton. Maybe a slight lean there. And leave Eno out. And maybe if we find out at some point, Andrea, as the week goes on, that there is going to be no James Conner, then I would pivot, probably play Eno over Pittman. Right. And again, both of those wide receivers that you mentioned that I'm choosing between, Hollywood for sure. If you're choosing between Pittman and Sutton, they're in the same tier. So I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think the Colts end up scoring a few more points than the Broncos have, but not totally open to either one. I'm leaning Pittman. I did think Sutton has maybe a little more big play value there, but that would be the direction I go. So, and I would play Eno over that second wide receiver. That would mean you play two Cardinals. I'd probably still do it given Seattle's defense. They're not good. Starting Taysom over Kittle this week. I agree with that, Mr. Scampers. The Joker. For flex, full PPR, David Montgomery or Jeff Wilson Jr. I have Ramondre Stevenson, the one running back 1 spot. Oh, Jeff Wilson Jr. I'm really tempted to. I mean, he's been good. Tevin Coleman got the touchdowns. I know. I don't think that's going to be the regular occurrence, right? Again, these are 2 guys in the same tier. This is why it's a hard question. We have Jeff Wilson Jr. ranked 13th. He's playing the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, that's pretty exciting. I'm going to go with that one over Montgomery. Washington does play a little bit tough up the middle, at least. They have some good players in the middle of their defensive line. So I'll go with that. We just want to say about Montgomery. I felt like, we were all kind of, and I'm guilty of this as well, I say we all, me, a little bit guilty of over worrying the Khalil Herbert presence, right? Because we've heard all summer long that maybe this team feels like the coaching staff feels like Khalil Herbert's a better fit for this offense than Montgomery. Yet when we see Montgomery healthy and ready to go, he tends to get the full load. So Herbert is still there, right? That's a concern. And look, Tevin Coleman is still there in San Francisco, but Wilson's role has been pretty rock solid without Elijah Mitchell there. So I would go that direction. And good, I think Ramondre Stevenson would be a good play this week as well. Charles Davis, Rondale Moore at Seattle, or DJ Moore at Rams for a PPR flex. I'll go ahead and play Rondale Moore in this one. Not enthusiastic endorser of Rondale Moore. Slightly not. So, I mean, I think you're hoping to catch a little lightning in a bottle with DJ Moore, playing with PJ Walker coming in. But the Rams will have a week to prepare. I'm not getting too excited about that. Nick, Waddle or Hollywood in the flex. Also, which should I trade and which I keep? I have Hill and Cup. I would trade Hill. Unless I got just the hugest haul for Cup. It would have to be a huge haul to get Cup. So if we were drafting all over again, I mean, how would the draft order go? Cooper Kupp would be the first pick overall, wouldn't he? Right? I mean, so think about that when you're like someone's coming to you to trade for Cooper Kupp, or you're trying to assess the value and what you need in return to land him. I think it's a pretty easy question. It would be a ton because he would be the number one overall pick, right? So I would play Hollywood over Waddle in the flex, just given the quarterback situation and the matchups. By the way, that game might be a little later this week, the Seattle-Arizona game, because there's some kind of baseball thing going on. Who knew? Baseball. I thought they were done by now. Pesky baseball. And that Nick said that's in a PPR. Yep, that makes sense. Mr. Scampers, better handcuff rest of season, Michael Carter or Darrell Henderson, half-point PPR. I'm going to go with Michael Carter. Just seems like this Rams offense is, do we see it getting better? The offensive line has been so poor, and Matthew Stafford's having such struggles, and the running backs are, having struggles. It hasn't been going well. I'm gonna go ahead and say I would probably prefer Michael Carter right now. I don't know the Jets offense. I'm not expecting every week to be last week, right? This is totally not the case, but I do think for the Rams, I'm expecting every week to be last week and the week before and the week before. Okay, not last week. Last week, Cowboys are a super good defense, right? But just in general, it's been tough for them. They're having a hard time handling pass rushes, opening holes, doing the things you need to get done to make this offense work. I'm not an enthusiastic endorser of that. So there you have that, Mr. Scampers. Nick, running back 2, PPR, J-Rob, Hunt, Mostert, or the rookie Brian Robinson. Oh, if I thought Mostert was all the way healthy, which, he may well be. This may have been just a maintenance issue because we know he has the knees, but I kind of like the direction that's going, right? With just he's kind of taking charge of that offense or that backfield. I don't know what my expectations were for Chase Edmonds. I guess I didn't really have any. I think most of my draft capital was invested in later rounds of Mostert because I knew he has, he's a good fit for the offense. We've seen it before. I want to give James Robinson another chance. Kareem Hunt's kind of been a little disappointing. Brian Robinson, I don't think he's quite there yet. So it's between Robinson and Mostert for me. And I'm going to probably go Mostert there, assuming he's healthy. Watch the injury reports as the week goes on. Check the updates at footballdiehards.com. If you're a subscriber, you get all kinds of information right up through kickoff. Tons of stuff. Tons of tools there, too. DFS content, columns, videos, lineup optimizers, all the things you want. Fantasy GM, my Fantasy GM. Get in on that. Lockett was a big miss for so much for me. So much for me, Scampers. Hey. Stephen Pavia, would you start Eno versus Seattle or Algier versus San Francisco? If there is no James Conner, I would start Eno Benjamin. Not excited about Algier against San Francisco, but he is the lead piece. Scampers, half-point PPR need 2. Ramondre if Damian Harris is out, and I think he will be. I know he got on the practice field on a limited basis. We heard the reporting it was going to be a multiple-week absence for Damian Harris. I think that's probably the more likely outcome, but right, definitely if, no question, Robinson if Harris is out. At Cleveland, love it. Mike Williams and his volume versus Denver, or Gabe Davis and his what the hellness against Kansas City. Oy. Boy, I want to play. I want to play pieces of this offense, right? I just do. I think Mike Williams is probably the smarter play. I'm just going to double check and see what the rankings think, how far apart it is. I'm going to probably play Mike Williams in that one. I mean, I think that's the smart play, right? And so we have him right at the current rankings, right at the borderline, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. That feels good for me. Even if Keenan Allen comes back this week, I think that's fine with me. But Gabe Davis is a swing for the fence play whenever you want to play one. So maybe you look at your opponent's lineup scampers and say, oh, wow, this guy's going to kill me. He's got everybody on the lineup. I need that huge swing for the fence play. And I mean, Mike Williams can get some of that big play with his volume for sure. So Ramondre and Mike Williams for me. I want to, especially with no Harris. If there was a Harris, maybe I'd pivot to the 2 wide receivers. Holy Elliott D, a new Texan from the dry heat of Arizona. Nice to finally put a face to the voice after last year's. Hi, Holly Elliott. How are you? Nice to see you in the chat. Stephen Pavia, do you like Kareem Hunt? Not sure. Or ETN Indy this week in a PPR? Boy. So Kareem Hunt's been a little bit of a disappointment to me, right? Just like not a huge disappointment. I'm not overly invested. I think I'd probably a slight lean to him over ETN. Just given, New England is not they're tough matchup but not impenetrable. ETN against Indy. I feel like this maybe is more of a James Robinson get right week. But they've got to keep it, I think if they keep it in the ballpark, but that's maybe how you assess this. If you feel like the Jags are going to be playing better offense in general and be in this game, I'd go ahead and avoid ETN over Hunt. They are right in the same narrow band for us, late, just outside the running back 2 and firmly in the flex conversation. So in the PPR, they're both fine. Yep, Hunt at New England. Ramondre Stevenson for Godwin, a good trade, a good move. Is Ramondre for Godwin? If you're getting Godwin, I think that's probably a good move. And I'm guessing you have other running backs in there. So, based on the draft capital expended. So, yeah, I'd probably do that. Charles Davis, is A. Gibson now droppable and pick up bye week fill-ins? So, I don't want to say droppable because I think he'll still have a role and I'm greedy about my running backs. But yeah, it's not going to be good. He's not going to be a must-start play every week, right? Which is what most people drafted him to be, is a must-start play or, a sure starter every week. I don't know that he's going to be that. Cody Green, who do I start this week for my wide receivers? Flex. Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith, Jacoby Myers, Mike Evans, Romeo Doubs, Bateman, and Ayuk. So Jacoby Myers on a per-game basis is killing it, right? He's probably the play, and it doesn't seem to matter who the quarterback is. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm guessing you need 2 wide receivers and a flex. I'm going to play Amari Cooper. I'm going to play Myers. Oh, Mike Evans. I totally missed him. Wow. You've got way too many guys. What if I told you not to play Mike Evans? Cody Green. Why is he even on this list? I don't know how many you're choosing from. So help me out there. Corey Bishop, would you pick up Jacoby Myers or Boyd this week and drop Judy for the rest of the season and start this week? I would feel free to move on from Judy if I needed to. And I think, Boyd I would be interested in more so if there was no T. Higgins. Myers, I think, is a good standalone play. We just got to face it. He's the wide receiver 1 there for New England, and he's been pretty good at it. Added some touchdown equity this year, which we haven't seen in the past. Not a ton. I meant trade Waddle or Hollywood. I don't know. Do I need to scroll back up? I don't remember what the question was. I thought you wanted to start Waddle or Hollywood. So, I don't know who you were trading for. So you'll have to put the whole question in, and I'll figure it out. Not close to trading Cup at this moment. Exactly true. Graham F. Hi, Bob. Which 2 out of 3 half-point PPR? C. Samuel, Rondale Moore, Dubs. I would think Moore would be at the bottom of that pecking order for me. Samuel for sure, and I think Dubs for sure as well. Bob, is this a get-right game for Stafford and company versus Carolina? I don't know that it is, man. I don't know that offensive line is allowed. The Panthers can still get after the passer, and that's been the weakness for them is pass protection. Stafford's been sacked 21 times and hit countless more. Just hasn't been good. See this being the last win for the Panthers. I could see that too. Do you think KC will cover Gabe Davis a little better this weekend? I think they'll try. There's a lot of people to cover there. It seems like Isaiah McKenzie will be back. We saw Khalil Shakir come out. I think those two will continue to chop up that slot role like we saw Crowder and McKenzie do. and they've been pretty effective. Stephon Diggs is very good. Dawson Knox will be back. Man, I think it's hard to – I mean, I think they'll pay more attention to him, Steven, but I don't know if they could – I don't know if you can always stop him. But I think it's going to kind of be – I don't think he's the consistent, week in, week out producer anyway. I mean, that's going to be Stephon Diggs, and I think there are going to be various guys that show out. I don't think everyone's going to show out every week. So they have a chance, Steven. Hey, Troy, good to see you. Appreciate you coming. Again, everybody, I'm Bob Harris, in case you haven't been following along. You can find me at footballdiehards.com, where I apply my trade. We have all kinds of information there. Tons of great columns, news, information, constant stream of news, I can assure you, because I do the news, and there's lots of it. It's a newsy week every week at this point of the year, so keep on top of all the information. You can do it right there. Plenty of tools as well. Lineup optimizers for DFS, ownership values, pricing, all the things you need to set your DFS lineups. Also, I'll be here on Saturday answering more lineup questions, probably a little better because we have a little more information, right? So, we're kind of flying blind at this point on some of these things. Don't know what the injury situations will be, things like that. So we get a better look at that on Saturday, noon Eastern time every Saturday. Nothing but lineup questions for the full hour. Saturday night, 9 p.m., you can catch the DFS video right here on the YouTube channel with Jamie Calandro and Eric Romoff. We'll go through all the DFS matchups and give you all the plays that you need to make and talk about all the stacks, ownership percentages, get all the late information there. And then Jamie jumps over and joins us on SiriusXM NFL Radio for a segment. We're on from 8 to 11, Mike Dempsey and I, on SiriusXM NFL and Fantasy Sports Radio, the simulcast. Okay, so Andrew McGrady, DJ Moore, Brian Robinson. I'm going to go ahead and play Robinson in that one. And so I mentioned, I'm not like eager to force him into lineups, but I'm okay playing him when he's the better option. I think in this case, look, until we figure out what this offense is in Carolina, I don't need to force DJ Moore into lineups right now. I just don't. There's one playable commodity to me. And if I miss out on a big game because people weren't ready for PJ Walker, I'll live with that. I'm hoping I have some better options. In this case, I think Brian Robinson is. Again, saw him get 16 snaps. Gibson got 19, but Robinson out-carried him. I think 9-3, 8-3. I should look so I don't look stupid. But anyway, you get the point. I would go ahead and do that. Hi, Bob, says Winter Mute. Which tight end to pick up? Hayden Hurst at New Orleans or Evan Ingram at Indianapolis? Stick with Mo Alley Cox at Jaguars. I pick up Hayden Hurst. Been consistent and heavily targeted. Chuck Bachman, happy Wednesday, Bob. Thank you. Cousins versus Dolphins or Geno train versus Cardinals? I'm having a hard time getting off the Geno train, but man, the Dolphins' pass defense hasn't been fantastic, right? Maybe I played a better. Man, good weapons on both sides. Oy vey, that is a tough call. As I sit here and think about it, I'm gonna look at some numbers here and just double check and make sure what I'm thinking. Boy, Geno has been really. I'm probably gonna go ahead and play Geno given that matchup. I think that's a winnable matchup. I feel like I'm outsmarting myself here, right? Don't we do that as fantasy managers? We outsmart ourselves. We always think we know better. I think this is a perfectly viable question. I'm going to play Geno. Nick has Kupp and Tyreek Hill. I was asking before about start sit, but which wide receiver do you like better rest of season? Waddle and Hollywood. Which should I trade for a running back too? I would probably rather trade Waddle at this point. Just there seems like it's going to be some issues at quarterback going forward. Like, I love Waddle. Tyreek Hill is going to be a limiting factor. At some point, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a factor for Hollywood. But I think his role seems pretty solid to me. I'd probably go ahead and stick with Hollywood. Although I don't know if you wouldn't get back better return with Hollywood than you would with Waddle. So that's something to. No worries about the miscommunication, Nick. Just it's hard for me to scroll back up once I miss out on what the question is. But yeah, my preference would be. So I guess it gets trickier than that, right? Because as I think about it, Waddle, I think you'd probably get more for Hollywood. So maybe since it's close enough, maybe you should propose like multiple trades to the people you're making the offer to, right? And see which one gets you the better return. Or, put those guys on the block and say, here, I'm looking for running back help and see what you get. Andrea, need one flex, Elijah Moore or Michael Gallup versus Philly or, Benjamin PPR. If there is no, like if we find out on Friday that James Conner is going to play, go ahead and plug in. Otherwise, I'd probably play Elijah Moore given the matchups. Like Dallas is not winning with their offense. They're winning with their defense. And they're cobbling together on offense. They're not throwing the ball deep. I'd probably avoid that. I mean, I think it's playable, but I think Elijah Moore is a reasonable enough pivot. Scampers, half-point PPR needs 2. Christian Kirk at Indianapolis, Thielen at Miami, A.J. Dillon versus New York Jets, and Curtis Samuel at Chicago. I'm playing Samuel and Christian Kirk. Like, I think Thielen is an okay play as well. But, man, he just doesn't seem to have the same goal line cachet that or the end zone kind of role that we've seen in the past. Doesn't look very explosive as you would expect. So, I mean, he's getting older. He's like not as old as me, but he's getting older. Cody Green, you're welcome. One more question. So how do I feel about Dameon Pierce the rest of the season? Is he a sell high player or keep him? I think I would keep him. I don't know, but he's also a sell high player, right? I mean, he's coming off 2 huge games. And they were pretty favorable matchups for running back. So I'm not against selling him. I think I want to keep him, but everyone's available at the right price. Is McKinnon a worthwhile stash? CEH had I'm actually starting McKinnon in some leagues this week where I have some attrition and the bye week issues. So I think he is, and I think you look back to the playoff run and heading into the playoffs and the postseason for the Chiefs last year, you can see that Andy Reid, if nothing else, Andy Reid trusts Jerick McKinnon and has a role carved out for him. So I would. He is a stash. Dame, if Mostert is healthy, do you like him over Montgomery? Yes, and yes. If he's healthy. If he goes in with a questionable designation, all bets are off. We can come back and talk Saturday. Thank you, Nick. That's fine. Half-point PPR, similar thing. I mean, it's all relative. Henry Robertson wants to know in a PPR league, trade Cook for Pittman and Pierce. Dalvin Cook? I don't think I want both receivers from a team that has been sporadically producing an offense. No. But I would, Pittman may be a different piece, not Pierce. Scott Kobe. Hello, Scott. David Montgomery versus Washington or Melvin Gordon versus the Chargers. I'm probably going with not Melvin Gordon. I am not. I'm going to go ahead and go with Montgomery in that one. You're welcome, Steve. I have moments. Eileen Willie. I have Deebo Samuel, Pittman, Gabe Davis, and Jacoby Myers. Okay, I'm thinking back to that trade. So yeah, I don't know if I'd must start all those guys over Samuel every week, but Samuel's the guy you get the best return on, so that's fair. Who do I start? Myers, Gabe Davis, Deebo Samuel, and Pittman. Which 2 do I start? Which 2? Who do I start? Oh, you start Deebo. I'm probably starting Pittman, but Myers is a viable option. They're all viable options, but I'm probably starting Deebo and Pittman there. Thank you, Henry Robertson. Cody Green, sorry about one more question, but no problem. We got time. My RBs are CMC, Jonathan Taylor, and Pierce. So do I just stay comfortable starting those 3 every week or try and make a play for an elite wide receiver 1? Well, you definitely have the firepower to do that. Oh, was that Pierce in the last one? So see, give me first names. So if it's Pittman and Henry, if it's Pittman and Dameon Pierce, yeah, I'm doing that trade. If it's Alec Pierce, no, I'm not doing that trade. Help me with first names, people. So here's the thing. When you do your question, give me a first initial and a last name. If it's a lineup question, give me who they're playing. Help me out. It's not that hard, right? But this is why. There's sometimes you'll be surprised to learn people have the same last name as other people, and I don't always make the right connection. So there you have it. So CMC, JT, Pierce. So I just say, yeah. So I'd be fine starting those plays every week, but I do think in this case, if you wanted to trade away Pierce and try and get a good wide receiver 1, if you can, might be able to give him the last 2-week run. I would do that. You're welcome, Eileen. Scott Kobe, how valuable is Taysom Hill in a PPR, and how big a role do you foresee him having? Well, Mike Triplett, who covers this team on the regular and has for a while for ESPN and now NewOrleansFootball.com, thinks that this is not going away, and I think as long as they're beat up, as long as we're trying to decide every week if if Jarvis Landry is going to be available, if Michael Thomas is going to be available, if Chris Olave is going to be cleared from the concussion protocol, if all those things are true every given week or any given week, boy, I think he's very valuable. So again, I talked about this a little bit earlier, Scott, but if you're sitting there, you're deciding between all the tight ends in your fantasy league, not named Travis Kelce, not named Mark Andrews. I'm going to go ahead and throw Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Tyler Higbee, just to heavily target guys that are fairly consistent producers. I mean, everyone seems like a little bit of a dart toss. And if you're going to be tossing that dart, not a lot of them have 4 touchdown upside. I don't know, I'm not going to overstate it and say that's the expectation for Taysom Hill, but boy, he gets great high leverage opportunities, and that's worth something, right? And so he's like the Will Dissly on times 10. Dissly seems to have that nose for the end zone. Well, so does Taysom Hill, except Taysom Hill, unlike the other tight ends in the league, is taking the snaps directly from center and making the plays on his own. So I think there is something to this. I mean, I think, I have a hard time finding 12 tight ends I would start ahead of him in fantasy right now. Maybe that makes maybe that's the way to say it. Eileen got offered DK Metcalf for Jacoby Myers. I get Metcalf and give Myers. I'd do that. I mean, Myers has been really good. Don't get me wrong. And it's been, in PPR, he's been pretty valuable. I think he's right inside the top 10 or right up there in per game, but he's missed some time. And his quarterback play, apparently not everyone is Geno Smith, right? So yeah, I would do that, Eileen. I think that's a good offer and a good deal. Stephen Pavia, frustrating watching Tunyon standing on the sidelines when the Packers are in the red zone. Irv Smith or Taysom, better starter. I'd start Taysom over Irv Smith. I just would. Irv Smith is just a guy, it seems like. I mean, we've been waiting. We've expected the breakout for 2 years. I haven't seen signs of it yet. I mean, I've seen moments, and the moments that he's had, he's blown. He's ended up dropping passes and not looking great. So, I'm fine playing Taysom in that case. After this week, Bob, do I trade Zach Ertz? I don't want to trade Zach Ertz. I think he's a tradable commodity. I don't know that I'd be pushing that. I mean, put a little more detail in there, Cody, if there's a reason or if you have a specific target in sight. Thank you, Dame. I appreciate you coming and spending the time with me. I appreciate everyone coming and spending the time with me. Hit the subscribe button if you like. Hit the like button if you'd like. Hit the dislike button if you don't like. Go to footballdiehards.com. Tune in to Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Is it 9 p.m.? 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm doing the time zone conversions in my head. It's 10 to 1. Thursday night, 10 to 1. Friday night, 10 to midnight. Saturday, we're on 8 to 11 on NFL Radio, simulcast on the Fantasy Channel. Catch me with Jeff Manzo, the pregame show, every Sunday from 11 to 1. It's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., right at the kickoff. Cade Smith, got T-Law, Deontay, Cooks, Olave, and Kenneth Walker on my bench. Russell Wilson and Pitts are both available. Should I try to make any moves? I would not put that out. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has not played well the last 2 games, right? Neither has Russell Wilson. Do I think Russell Wilson's going to be better down the stretch? I kind of do. Am I 100% sure? No. Do I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be better down the stretch? Yeah. Am I 100% sure? No. I wouldn't want to give up. I mean, if Russell Wilson's available as a free agent pickup, yes. If it's a trade, I'd be reluctant to give up a lot of draft capital for Russell Wilson. Maybe more for Pitts if I'm buying extremely low. Are those bottles of beer before you? These are bottles of liquor behind me, and I don't drink. So no beer, no alcohol. You wouldn't like me when I drink. Nobody does. Who do you think are the real Jaguars, says Mr. Scampers. They've looked very good on both sides of the ball, and they've also looked really bad. It's true. I think that may be who they are, Scampers. Like, that may be it. They're a team that's kind of working its way into being a more consistent, dangerous team. And I think the pieces are there, but the players aren't all quite, there yet. And I think it'll be a little bit of a process. I think by the time all is said and done, there'll be more, the 2 games we saw that were fantastic. Like, Trevor Lawrence has like some good plays in him. Just needs to make smarter moves. They have the right coaching staff. They're adults, unlike the last coaching staff, or at least the last head coach. I think Doug Peterson's a great coach for this, and the assistants are really well-versed and experienced guys working with quarterbacks. So I think at the end of the season, we'll look back and we'll say they were better than we expected. I think it was a pretty low bar. So that's an easy thing to say, but I think probably closer to the higher end than the lower end. Jacoby Myers, Gabe Davis, Michael Pittman, Deebo Samuel. Which three do I keep? Wow. Well, I mean, I'm probably throwing Myers out of the mix there. That's a good group of receivers. And I like Jacoby Myers, but that's where I'm at. People are saying I should trade Eckler, but is he going But he is going bananas. I have Hurts, Eckler, Deebo, Evans, Ertz, Kamara, bench, Waddle, Olave, Kenneth Walker. I think I should keep Eckler. I would keep Eckler, and I would try to trade, like, if you need to trade somebody. And it looks like you have pretty good players at all the positions. I don't see why you're forcing any changes. I might stand pat. I think it's a pretty good roster. If your record isn't sucking, if you're not having a bad run of bad luck, I'd probably stand pat there. Have about 5 more minutes, people. I'll get into some more questions here. I just felt like since there are not a lot of consistent tight ends, I can get a lot of value, and I'm just nervous for when Hopkins comes back. I don't disagree with that. I don't know that he starts getting 10 to 15 targets a game, though. He didn't get it last year, did he? So, I mean, like, it's in the range of possible outcomes that Hopkins comes back and becomes dominant. Just, we didn't see it last year. And they brought